Hi, this is Dave Donnan. I'm an adjunct professor at Northwestern University teaching ISEN 473, a graduate course on the future of food and agriculture. I've been in the food industry for over 40 years as an engineer, running food plants, managing companies, and consulting to many of the largest food and agriculture companies in the world. For you, as food industry executives, I'm sure you are concerned about all aspects of healthy eating, nutrition, and consumer lifestyles. Also, since we work in the food industry, I'm sure we've all had the experience on the occasions when either at a friend's house, a cocktail party, or at your Aunt Martha's Thanksgiving dinner, when you've been asked that fundamental, primal food industry question. Can we feed the world? A simple question that is rather hard to answer. Actually, the calculation for feeding the world is quite straightforward. We start with the number of people in the world, in our case, 8 billion. We then multiply by what each person eats. And finally, this must equal or less than our planet. Pretty simple equation. But inevitably, there are complications with the formula, things that will make the equation get out of balance, forces that will make it more difficult. I've decided to divide these forces into two different types. The first is slow-moving but predictable forces. The most essential is population and the impact of demographics. Our global population is 8 billion people and is expected to expand to nearly 10 billion by 2050. Not only more people, but more old people. Our birth rate is slowing and we are living longer. Soon the number of people over 65 will be greater than the entire population of people under 15. And over 3 billion new middle-class consumers will emerge as India and China continue to expand their economies. We are also living mostly in cities. By 2030, there'll be 39 cities with over 10 million inhabitants each. By 2050, there'll be 50 cities representing over 68% of the global population in the world. And approximately 3 billion new middle-class consumers will emerge in Asia. In fact, right now, more people live inside the circle than outside the circle. But unfortunately today, 770 million people are food insecure in the world. The good news is that we have made tremendous progress on reducing hunger around the world. In 1990, 20% of the world was food insecure. But by 2017, food insecurity only represented 7.8% of global population. Regrettably, the pandemic and global conflicts have reversed the trend, and now 10% of the world is food insecure. But while hunger has been reduced, obesity has taken over. Over 1.9 billion people are either overweight or obese in the world. That's 26% of the global population. The World Health Organization treats food scarcity and obesity as two ends of a global malnutrition epidemic. We're eating high caloric foods, but often with little nutritional value. So something must be done about our diets around the world. We need to increase our intake of nutritious calories and find better balance in our diets. We have found that as populations get richer, they also change their diets from simple grains and legumes, then to more proteins, and finally processed foods. Let's go back to our little formula. We have 10 billion people with 3 billion new middle-class consumers in Asia. They will expect to eat more processed foods, more proteins. The dramatic increase in meat consumption alone will require a 100% increase in grain crops of animal feed. That's a 100%. In fact, if the world adopted the diet we have in North America, what we eat every day, it's called the Standard American Diet, or SAD for short. If the world adopted that diet, we would need 5 planet Earths by 2050. Obviously, this is not possible. Something must change. We only have this one Earth with limited resources of land and water. But what if we stripped away all the water? This is what it would look like. Notice the blue ball over the plains? That represents all the available water on the planet, both fresh and salt water. The second smaller sphere over Kentucky is all the fresh water in the ice caps, buried underground and even in our bodies. It represents 2.5% of the total water. And the third and smallest sphere near Atlanta, here, let me help you with this arrow. This is the available fresh water in rivers, lakes, and groundwaters. Just 1% of the fresh water. This is what we can access. This is what we have. And 70% of this water is used in agriculture. Water is our most valuable resource, and it is scarce. A colleague from a business council told me that it is expected over the next 30 years, more wars will be over water than over oil. And our climate and agriculture are linked. The effects of climate change and greenhouse gases are being felt by farmers, from longer growing seasons for some to reduced rainfall and new insects and crop diseases in others. Agricultural impacts climate from livestock and methane emissions. 27% of all greenhouse gases come from agriculture. Food activists are proposing a reduction in meat consumption, not for nutritional reasons, but for the environment. Now let's move to the second set of forces. These are fast-moving, but unpredictable forces. We're living in a world of VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, with dramatic shifts in political power, nationalism, and governance resulting in problems of financial volatility, migration, political instability, activism, and reduced influence of global bodies such as the United Nations, OECD, World Health Organization, etc. The Russian-Ukraine conflict has destabilized global agricultural trade, particularly in several crops that are concentrated in Russia and Ukraine, such as seed oils, barley, wheat, and fertilizers. Many of the famines and food shortages are in fact self-imposed. Probably the most visible self-imposed disruption is global trade. The world's agricultural system is based on the premise of free trade, with large agri-food companies like Cargill, ADM, and Bunge produce in the best regions in the world and ship to those customers that need the product. The recent trade tariff wars with China have upended the global agricultural infrastructure, reducing American soy exports to China by 80%. Brazil is trying to pick up the slack, but they do not have the infrastructure. The result of this one trade dispute has lowered the overall global agricultural productivity. So much for feeding the world. One of the impacts of climate change is more volatile weather patterns. We are seeing unprecedented temperatures and droughts in the Midwest, record high temperatures in Europe, and fires in California. The frequency and severity of climate-related disaster events has increased dramatically in the US in the last decade. In the last 5 years, over $750 billion has been lost due to climatic effects. Over 20 significant weather-related disasters occurred in 2021 alone. Our industrial food system is designed to produce low-cost, mass-produced calories. We have a very efficient and low-cost food system in North America. In fact, the US household spending only 6.5% of their budgets on food. That's much lower than other countries, such as France at 13.5%, China at 26%, and Nigeria at 57%. For decades, the US agricultural system was based on the policy of abundance and comparative advantage. Abundance helped us win the Cold War, showing how democracy resulted in full grocery stores and plenty of choice. Comparative advantage meant we focused on crop specialization and efficiency. But as a result of our crop specialization, we now see that 75% of all the food we eat comes from 12 plants and 5 animals. Corn, soy, rice, wheat, potatoes, beef, pork, chicken, lamb. We lack biodiversity as well. As a result, we are more prone to catastrophic pandemics that can wipe out our food systems. One example is our commercial bananas that are a single varietal, Cavendish. This brings us to what is top of mind right now, global pandemics. In fact, with climate change comes increased insects and pests invading our crops. In addition, we also see major pandemics that can wipe out both plants and animals. Coronavirus is one of several pandemics that have occurred in the last decade. It will not be the last. Animal viruses are just as prevalent. The African swine flu has devastated hog production in China. China has 50% of the total pigs in the world, and they are being wiped out. So we have a challenge ahead. On one side, we have 3 billion new consumers needing many more proteins and higher nutrition that requires us to double our crop yields. But we are running out of water. Our climate is causing problems. We have limited land. Our global trade is fragmented, and we are seeing more disease. So back to our formula. Given what we know, can we feed the world? Luckily, we are the all innovators. We thrive with change. People like you are here to change the world. In the last 5 years, we've seen the advent of new agricultural revolution. Investors are now seeing the benefits of technology and agriculture. Big data, precision agriculture, drones, sensors are transforming the entire process of farming. A soy farmer recently told me that he sits in his combine all day, watching the screen to know precisely how much fertilizer, water, and nutrients to add to each plant. He says he farms data. He has increased his yields by over 25% in the last 5 years and expects to add another 20 to 30% increase as well. Genetics can also have a dramatic impact on food production. Drought-resistant seeds, nutrition-fortified vegetables, improved pest resistance are all attributes of genetic research. In fact, CRISPR, which stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats, is the word processor of genetics, allowing for precise development of attributes. One such product is to edit cattle genes to reduce the emittance of methane gas, thus reducing their impact on the climate. And we're beginning to understand the world of microbes and the relationship between our gut biomes and the biomes of soils. Both have over 39 trillion different microbes. However, our gut biome diversity has decreased with the introduction of antibiotics and processed foods. Similarly, we have lost soil diversity through the use of agrochemicals and intense farming. The Human Biome Project, an enormous and cross-disciplinary study, is instrumental in beginning to tease out the connection between soil microbiome and our gut microbiome. Hopefully, this will lead to better health outcomes for everyone. New approaches to agriculture are also underway. Vertical farming, urban farming, and greenhouse technologies are all under development. Indoor farming has shown to reduce water usage by 70%. Entrepreneurs and startups are using sensor technologies, LED lighting systems, and precision nutrients to develop the next generation of urban growing systems. I have met with several entrepreneurs in the indoor grow systems, and it's remarkable their innovations and determination. We can grow now where we could not grow before. We can also get proteins from legumes, pulses, and nuts, and there are over 2,000 edible species of insects. Grasshoppers and crickets are amongst the ones most commonly eaten and use 50% less water than growing chickens. Algae is another source that makes up 40% protein. These, among others, are the many new sources of proteins, as well as our plant-based meats that are currently on the market. We also need to tackle food waste. Food waste is a big issue. 30% of our total food production is wasted, either at time of harvest, in the supply chain, or post-consumption. If we could find ways to reduce this waste, then more of our food system would go to feeding the 10 billion people. From restaurants reducing food waste to grocery stores selling ugly vegetables, there are many great examples of how we are tackling food waste. Finally, probably the largest impact may come from the most neglected part of our food systems, the smallhold farmer. 2.5 billion people live on the 500 million small farm households, mostly in developing countries. If we were able to provide the right seeds, nutrients, and economics to these farmers, they could move from sustenance farming to feeding their neighbors, truly feeding the world. This is why large multinationals like Nestle, Unilever, Walmart, Coca-Cola are working with NGOs to promote the economics and viability of these farmers. Private funding has now surpassed government assistance. In fact, smallhold farmers may be the answer to feeding the world. So, final question: can we feed the world? Many problems, potential solution, lots of work ahead. But we are the food industry leaders. It is our job to overcome the obstacles, find the solutions. There are thousands of entrepreneurs that are trying to make a difference in our food system. And the pandemic showed the vulnerability of our food supply chain, and we are now working to fix the problems. If we can all work together, we can ensure that we can feed the world. Thank you.